Step into the heart of Australian agriculture with Salt of the Earth Farm Stories, hosted by Darren Grigg. Through personal, on-the-ground conversations, Darren shares the voices of farmers from all walks of life, from multi-generational family farms to trailblazers in sustainable agriculture. Each episode reveals the passion, resilience, and deep connection between people and the land, reminding us where our food comes from and who makes it possible. Be inspired by those sowing the seeds of our future.
We have to go for maximum yield per acre, but yield of nutrient density. If that will be the metric, then a lot of problems will be solved instantly.
Today we're speaking with Louis de Jaeger, award-winning documentary filmmaker, international keynote speaker, and author of the new book, SOS, Save Our Soils. We catch up with him near Brussels, Belgium, after a globe-spanning journey where he's met with some pioneering farmers and asked the big question: how can we feed the world without poisoning it? Louis isn't pointing fingers, he's shining a light on farmers doing it right, on forgotten wisdom, on future-ready solutions already in nature. He questions why food that's safe costs more than food that harms us. What if we stopped measuring yield by tonnes and started measuring it by nutrients? And he believes that if food isn't your medicine, medicine will become your food. From free nitrogen to future technology, from soil health to self-respect. Let's get into it. Hello, Louis. Welcome.
Hey Darren, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Mate, it's an honour. And mate, what part of the world have we caught you today?
Well, I think I'm on exactly the opposite side of where you are. I'm in Belgium, a super tiny country in Europe.
Right, and what's that current climate like? And tell me a bit about the farming practices around you at the moment. What are they farming?
Yeah, so actually Belgium has very fertile soil. And we are farming a lot of corn, maize, a lot of potatoes. Actually, we're a famous potato country, and we actually make French fries out of them. And actually, French fries were invented by the Belgians. So in theory, you should say Belgian fries. And we actually export a lot to Australia and to all countries around the world. So we're a very famous potato country. But we also do have a lot of pigs that never see the sunlight, which is a bit sad. And cows, and another thing that's very famous in Belgium is chicory.
Right. Well, you talked about spuds. I'm going to love this chat. I grew up on a spud farm, and my family is still there, and all my cousins are big into growing potatoes, cover crops, and dairy. So, mate, I want to just go back to the start a little bit. Where were you born, and were you surrounded by nature and a farming environment?
So I was born in Bruges, the Venice of the North, and I was actually born in a family that used to farm. My grandmothers, they were both farmers, but they actually had to leave the countryside because they had no future in farming. And in Belgium there was a movement going on, get big or get out, and they had a small farm and they could sustain themselves, but in the changing economical reality, that wasn't possible anymore. So for me it was a bit sad actually to hear those stories, and I always longed to go back to farming. But I did grow up with a mother that loved to garden, and she showed me how to have a vegetable garden. My uncle still had a little farm, so I was always still a little bit in between, and I never lost this farming microbe.
Good to hear. And I'm glad, mate, for what I hear you're up to now. You said at the age of 18, you were already concerned about our food systems and where we're heading. What sparked that awareness?
Yeah, really. I actually one of my influences in farming is actually my two grandmothers. It has always been. It's a bit strange or odd maybe, but my one grandmother, she's super into organic. She's almost very severe into it, and she says nothing that's not organic doesn't come into my house.
Wow.
And then my other grandmother is like, oh, whatever, I don't believe in all that crap, just give me whatever I want, and give me a good whatever. And so that got me interested at one side, and on the other hand, yeah, of course, having a girlfriend who's also like looking into food because she's a dancer, she dances, and so for her health is very important. And she said, oh, look, I stopped eating this and started eating that, and then I really started thinking about it, and when I was in the supermarket, for example, I had two tomatoes in my hands. One was organic and the other one was not organic, and you couldn't see the difference. And I kind of instinctively knew, well, yeah, that non-organic tomato, it has been sprayed multiple times, and the organic tomato hasn't. So it's probably better to eat food that hasn't been poisoned, right? But then, yeah, when you go at the checkout, you see the price difference, then you're like, my God, so you have to pay more money not to get poisoned. There's something that's not right. So I was really interested in how that worked, and got to do research about it. And also I had this dream of becoming a farmer myself one day, and I also wanted to find out what kind of farm do I want to start. I didn't become a farmer because of a lot of reasons, but it did propel me on a very, very interesting journey.
So you went and studied, and what did you study?
Well, I waited for 5 years before studying. I first did a road trip around the world, really looking for answer, because I really was think I was destined to become a farmer, and I traveled through the United States, talked with farmers, talked with professors, and then after that we went and lived in the south of France, where I experimented a lot on a piece of land, farming a little bit, and then I realized that if I want to go back to Belgium, my home country, and I wanted to start a farm, I actually had to pay around $100,000 per hectare, which is a lot of money. So if I want 10 hectares of land, it's about 25 acres, I had to pay $1 million or euros, and that's
and
money.
At the age of 20?
Yeah, exactly. I don't come from a wealthy family, so we don't have that money on our bank account. So that was like not a good direction to go. But while doing all that research, I actually found out that my biggest passion is actually to make sure that the word is known about existing farmers that are already showing the future. I thought, well, I have to start a farm to show how it's possible to do it in a different way. But then after seeing all these fantastic farmers, I saw, well, I don't have to be another farmer showing a good example. I maybe have to be the one that promotes the other farmers' ways of doing, and just put that in the spotlight. And also, her question was, what did you study? After 5 years, I started studying again. I studied agro and biotechnology, green management, which is a study that really teaches everything about managing green spaces, going from city parks to grazing cows and everything in between. And I often compare it with landscape architecture, but with a more scientific version of it. And then I actually started a landscape architecture firm, and now we do design farms. So I kind of farm anyway, just in another scale and another way. And that has been working out well.
This will be landscape architecture for large-scale farms as well as backyards with organic vegetable gardens.
Yeah, mostly all edible landscapes, and we do some bigger gardens as well, but mostly also focus on estates, people with a couple of hectares to hundreds of hectares, or even entire islands we're doing right now, which is pretty cool.
Serious?
It's like playing
islands.
Playing this island tycoon or roller coaster tycoon as a child, where you can like build it on the computer. We're building it in real life, so we're still like kids playing around, but then in real life, and regenerating land at the same time. So that's
Are you
nice.
living the dream?
Yeah, I'm gonna touch wood, but I'm very happy with the life I'm living.
Fantastic. I love hearing that. And when you got this design in mind, is nature and organics at the forefront?
Yeah, so one of the things I found out viewing all these farms worldwide that are regenerative is that they all have one thing in common, and That one thing is that they work with nature-based solutions. Instead of using inputs that cost a lot of money and that are not natural at all, they try and look at nature and try to mimic nature. So, for example, a very simple example is that if you buy nitrogen fertilizer, that's been a machine invented by Haber and Bosch, two Germans, to get nitrogen from the atmosphere and transform it into a solids that you can put on your field. But if you look at nature, you have clover, for example, or a lot of other plants in the clover or bean family, or also a lot of trees actually that do it naturally thanks to bacteria. And those farmers very logically see, well, why pay for it if you can get it for free? Why pay for expensive fertilizer if you can just plant clover or plant those trees and they will get the fertilizer for free? And I often laugh about it, but that would be like a quote I love to put on my t-shirt one day. Why pay for it if you can get it for free? Because regenerative farming is actually also very economical. Like I own a couple of businesses and I know how important it is to make enough money not to go bankrupt. It's the same with farming, and one of the first things you need to do is make sure that as a farmer you don't go bankrupt. And one of the most interesting things to do is to cut costs. And for example, I know farmers that gone regenerative organic all the way and eliminated all pesticides, all herbicides, all fertilizers, and they've saved tons of money and also tons on diesel fuel because also some of them stopped plowing and have now no-till farming, and they have to. Yeah, they only spend half of the diesel that they used to spend because they don't have to go on their fields as often anymore. And then the soil starts building up again. The rainworms, the earthworms are coming back, and the soil starts building, and you need to give less water. And it's like this positive feedback loop that goes up and up and up. And that's just so fantastic to see that you can replace like man-made stuff with how nature has been doing it for millions of years.
And can nature add enough? Like if we're pulling food out of the soil that's already taken nutrient out of the soil, and we send that off to eat or to grow a piece of clothing, is nature enough? Is photosynthesizing and adding nitrogen and the worms, is that going to be enough to keep replacing that?
Yeah, very good question. And that was one of my biggest concerns, actually. And I was talking with David Montgomery, a fantastic author. He wrote several books. It's super interesting. And we were talking about it, and he said, well, yeah, in an ideal world, you could say, well, we're growing it on the fields and exporting it to the cities, and then the food waste would need to go back to the fields. That's like a very logical thing to do because you're taking something out, you have to take something in. But it's impractical to do so and also super expensive. And then he said something to me that really blew my mind. And he says, well, we have to grow fertility on site. And it was like, but how do you get something out of nothing? And then years have passed. I've still doing a lot of research. I'm still doing research right now. And if you look at the Earth, when it was formed, there used to be zero soil. Everything used to be rock. Soil wasn't created. It was created by plants, little mosses that went on the land and started to break down the rocks together with fungi. They grinded the rocks, and then those little mosses died, and bigger plants could grow on them. They had bigger roots. They could grind up more rocks, and that mineral material, the rocky material, then mixed with the organic material, and together they formed the soils we have today. So all the soils in the world we have today are formed by processes like this. And so it's actually a proof that there is enough nutrients to support farming indefinitely. But I often compare the soil with, like, you're standing in front of a big cabinet full of cans of food, but you don't have a can opener. And that's exactly the case for a lot of plants. They have these roots, the fragile roots, but these fragile roots can't open the cans that are in the soil. So they need to find somebody with a can opener. And fortunately for the plants, the soil is full of bacteria and fungi, and they do have these proverbial can openers. And the plants then have a beautiful exchange system with those microbes and fungi. And so you were talking about photosynthesis. They use their leaves as solar panels to generate electricity for them, and they get CO2 from the air, and they get water from the soil. And that's actually the basic building blocks. So water, you need to have water, of course, but CO2 is in the soil, and more, unfortunately. And if you mix CO2 with water, you become sugar. It's like this mind-blowing thing that CO2, something you can't see, and you mix it with simple water, you get sugars. And these sugars, the plant use them to build themselves, but they also use it to like put it into the soil via their roots. And that's something incredible, because via their roots, they're giving it as a present to the soil life. I often laugh and compare it with baking pancake mix, because it's kind of the same ingredients as you put in pancakes. You have like the proteins, the eggs, the fats, the carbohydrates, and they like spray it into the soil with a difficult word. It's called exudates. And then the little soil creatures, the bacteria, the fungi, they say, oh my god, this plant just baked pancakes for us, let's go to the party. And if you go to the party, what do? You bring a little present, and that's what happens. It's this beautiful exchange system. And it's so crazy actually that the plants can alter the recipe of their pancakes or bake waffles, for example, instead. And then when they bake waffles, they attract another type of bacteria or fungi, and they bring another can of food. So instead of bringing potassium, they're going to bring phosphorus, for example, or other micronutrients. So it's with the chemical composition of these root exudates that they actually tell the bacteria, hey guy, I need more of this and more of this. So that's this fantastic, beautiful exchange between the two that's happening for millions of years. And of course, if you start spraying pesticides, you just kill this soil life, and you kill this beautiful interaction. And now we're just talking about food and not about protection even.
Mate, well explained. I wish I had had that explained to me when I was a kid that way, because that was very well said. As a world, are we listening to nature enough?
Not at all. No. We, for some reason, started to think that nature is our enemy. And it makes us scared of nature. It makes us scared of germs. And it makes us kill nature. But we don't realize that if we kill nature, or if we mistreat nature, we're actually killing ourselves as well. And that's a huge paradigm shift. But it's logical that we're doing it, because we used to be very scared about like getting a disease because we didn't understand it. It was only not super long ago, only in the 1800s, that people started to realize that disease is caused by microorganisms, and that we need to wash our hands after, if you're a doctor, after giving an operation to your patient, or after giving childbirth, then you need to wash your hands, because the doctors, they just used to like give an operation that had somebody die, didn't wash their hands, and then they delivered the baby, and then the mother died of an infection. That used to happen. So then they're like, oh my god, how does it happen? And then there is one doctor that says, hey guy, I think we should wash our hands. And they said, no, that's stupid, go away. But eventually they listened to him, and they started to disinfect their hands. And he said, oh my god, now we don't have as much mothers dying of childbirth anymore. And then we realized, okay, we have to wash our hands, but we went a bit too far in that, and now we wash our hands for everything, and we sterilize everything. But it's actually because of that now that our guts become less inhabited by the microorganisms we need, because we're living too sterile, and we need to have the best of both worlds. Of course, if you're handling sensitive things, you need to disinfect your hands if you give an operation, but you don't have to disinfect your hands every time you shook a hand, or if you pushed a shopping cart. That's ridiculous, because we actually have our anti-bacterial or whatever, we have it on our hands already. It's full of little microorganisms that protect our hands, and every time we put on this hand sanitizer, it kills the good guys, and they actually become much more vulnerable.
And COVID changed that, didn't it, too? We're all
Yeah,
cleaning our hands.
horrible.
You've spoken about the pressure farmers are under, and how much of that do you think stems from our expectations and such as, better yields?
Yeah, so that's the better yield thing is something that's been so ingrained by farmers for the last decades that they want to have as much yield as possible. They have this plight that they want to feed the world, and on one hand, that's fantastic. The more yield we can get from an acre of land, the better, actually. But the question always is, at what cost? And you have two big things in that equation. On the one hand, at what cost? If you have to get a lot of minerals or fertilizers from that are mined from the other side of the world, and you need a lot of diesel to get with your tractor like 20 times across your fields because you need to spray 20 times, then it's like, yeah, okay, here is your yield, but what did you have to do for it to get that yield? And also, having a high yield is not the same as having a high profit. I have this story of a farmer that was convinced by a nature conservancy group to not spray that year because there was like a flock of rare birds. And the farmer was like, okay, I like birds, whatever. I'm not gonna spray this year. Yeah, so the farmer didn't spray, the birds came, he was happy, the nature people were happy, but at the end there was less yield because, if you have a soil that's addicted to pesticides and to fertilizers, it's like a drug addict. You first need to rehabilitate a bit. So he didn't do that. He just stopped giving drugs to the land. So he saw that he had less yield, and he was actually a bit frustrated with it. He got paid by the nature people, so that wasn't a big problem. But what did he realize is that his yields were a bit lower, but his inputs were zero. So he actually made much more profit, and he was like, what the heck happened? And he was feeling a bit uneasy, I don't have less yield per acre, but I do have more profit.
More money.
He was a bit oh, darn it, what should I be happy now or not?
That's right. That's right.
So that was super happy. So that's one big thing. But another big thing is that I went and visited a laboratory in Boston not too long ago, and they're developing sensors to test the nutrient density with food. So let's say you have 20 tons of something, but the nutrient density is only 10 tons, let's say. I'm just reusing random numbers. Then you have 10 tons of food in 20 tons of watery stuff. But let's say instead of having that, you have less yield in kilograms or in tons, but the nutrient density is much higher. Then you actually have more yields per acre or more yields per hectare. And that is, in my opinion, the real metric. Because, okay, you can say, oh, I have so much kilos or so much tons. But if it's empty tons or empty calories,
what's the point?
What's the point? So I'm okay, we have to go for maximum yield per acre, but yield of nutrient density. If that will be the metric, then a lot of problems will be solved instantly.
So if we could use an apple, a potato, or a tomato, for example, how much less nutrient has that vegetable got in it compared to 50 or 100 years ago?
Yeah, so they've done some research about the nutrition that's in the plants 50 years ago and today, and they saw a big difference. So I don't know the exact numbers, but for apples, I think it was, you have to eat a couple of apples today to have the same as one apple so many years ago. I should look up the data because I don't remember numbers, but when you see it, there's this famous list where you can compare both of them, and it's really saddening to see that you really need to eat more today to get the same as 50 years ago, but also the same with organic. I've seen some studies on tomatoes where you have the organic tomatoes and the non-organic tomatoes, and okay, the organic tomatoes are a bit more expensive, but you're also getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
So, and also more taste. That's also an important.
Absolutely. But then we probably need to eat less. We don't need to eat as much if we're eating the good stuff.
Yeah, well, it was actually a doctor that once convinced me also, like, it was also around the age of 18 years, where he said, look, Louis, we are eating way too much as humans. Like, we just have to eat until we, like, have a almost a satisfied feeling in our stomach, but mostly we eat until we, like, can't get up anymore, almost. So he said that if people would eat a little bit less, that health would also like rise drastically. So it would be a win-win situation. But that's a hard one, of course. Psychologically, you're like, hey, you're not gonna take away my food, aren't you?
And thinking about our intake, there's been some studies show now that before babies are even born, they've got some of these pesticides already in their body. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a huge problem. And we're actually doing some research about this right now. There are studies that show that you have 26% higher chance of getting pregnant if you eat organic food in some cases. Your sperm quality is much higher if you eat organic. You have less chance of having a miscarriage if you eat organic. And you have also less chance of having a baby son that has genital deformities, such as cryptochidia, it's a very difficult word, or hypospadias. Don't Google it. It's something that you really don't want for your son.
No, right.
And that's just because you have pesticide residue from the food you eat. If you are literally exposed to pesticides as a mother because you live on a farm, then it's horrible. If you see the numbers of like the autism, more chance that your child gets autism, it's much higher. So it has really a big effect on mothers and their children. But so also the husbands are also not free to just go and eat junk food. It's also important that they eat healthy because what their contribution is to the equation is also very important.
And that could have an effect on our gene for future generations, couldn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. If like every generation we keep on having our fetuses growing up in poison, it will definitely change our genetics. But also our fertility rate has really dropped and is still dropping. So I was drinking something with a buddy not too long ago, and he said, well, we don't have to worry anymore about the global population, because if the fertility rate keeps dropping, then we'll just die out as a human species, not too far in the future. I was like, okay, what a positive message. Thank you for that.
Yes. Well, mate, regenerative agriculture is gaining some momentum quite well here in Australia. Actually, have you spent much time here in Australia, or have you followed what we're up to?
Well, I've definitely followed what you're up to. I've also been very much inspired by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, the founders of permaculture. That's actually something that really got me into the regenerative farming movement at the beginning. So that's like, 10 points for us Australia there. Like, especially I'm even drinking my tea from a Foster's glass. To be in the Australian vibe.
I was actually wondering what was in it, but it's tea. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's tea. It's not. No, for me, it's still morning. I'm not drinking Foster's for breakfast. But to be honest, I've never been in Australia. It's been on my bucket list for quite a long time. I'm definitely going there soon, but I haven't visited it yet.
Well, I noticed you're speaking on the world stage, mate. So we'll have you here one day soon, hopefully. And I give a lot of credit to Australian farmers. They're doing some incredible things, and they love their land and their animals.
Definitely.
But farming, as we said before, it's a big business, and you still need to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And often those traditional methods are the way to go. We need to get those yields. We need to put on synthetic fertilizers to pay our insurances and our interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to, don't we?
Yeah, and that's why I really never judge farmers. I think when I was around 18 years old, you're bit more extremist, and you think more black and white, and it's like, okay, I see these organic farms, they work perfectly, so yeah, I was then very angry at farmers, like, why are you not doing it? You can see that other people are doing it and they're making it possible. But then the more you get to talk to farmers and listen to their stories, the more you realize that they're really in a kind of locked in system, in like what you said, with insurance and the interest rates and whatever. It's super high pressure, and often the farmers only get profit of the last couple of extra tons they have. And for example, I often say to friends that are farmers, well, oh, look, I've seen this method. Why don't you try it out? And he was like, yeah, Louis, I'd love to, but if I like make one mistake and I have like 1 ton per hectare less, then I don't make money this year. And then, yeah, how am I going to send my kids to school? And then I was like, okay, fair point. So in theory, everybody could switch to regenerative organic. If the good policies would be there, if the consumers would be willing to support the farmers in the transition, and or if the government has special programs to have this transition, it could be done in, let's say, 5 to 10 years, make a transition to regenerative agriculture, and then I like to use the word regenerative organic, but in this current reality it's just not possible for a lot of farmers. It's very hard, and for that we need to give our like utter respect to them, to see that a lot of them are really struggling just to get by. So
would we be better off then perhaps gauging or measuring our yield from nutrients rather than perhaps quantity?
Yeah, 100%.
And then we could go back to doing what you told us before.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the nice thing about the lab. The lab is called Audacious. So right now, I think it's about $1,000 or something to test the nutrient density of food. I could be wrong, but it's a super high number. And they want to bring it down to like €1, €2, $3, $4, $5, something like that. And that when this testing will become super cheap, and I don't know, maybe one day we'll have an extra sensor on our smartphones, who knows, that we could just like in the supermarket test this orange or test something else and see the nutrient density, then people will look totally different, because then they'll see, okay, this is $1 for a kilo tomatoes, but there's like zero food in it and full of pesticide residues. Because I've seen on the internet now that they're even developing some sensors to check pesticide residues as well, even for consumers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw it on a Kickstarter platform, on a kind of crowdfunding website. I'm not sure if it's working yet, but I'm sure that these technologies will become way cheaper. And then, like, for example, I have a friend that said, yeah, Louis, you have to install the Yuka app. It's an app on the smartphone that you just scan in the barcode, and then it says how much additives and risky additives and other crap that's in it. And then it says, okay, this product is like 0 points on 100, 0%. The alternative is that product. Then I'm like, yeah, okay, then I'm not going to buy that product anymore. And so if people are more and more going to use that, it will really shift our way on how we look at food. Because food is medicine. There's this famous saying, if food is not your medicine, medicine will become your food. And that's so true.
Yeah. As I said earlier, my family are farming in Victoria, Bungaree, Victoria. They're growing a lot of spuds, and they're mixed farmers. Yeah. And this is some of the best soil the country has to offer. And in Australia, we're talking a lot about no-till, and I get it, building soil structure and so forth. And they can only put in one crop of spuds in that paddock every 5 years.
Yeah.
So they'll do a lot of cover crops leading up to it and look after that soil and build that structure. But then we've got to go and turn that soil quite deep, upside down, rip it apart, expose it to the sun to grow potatoes. Have you got any suggestions there on what we could do?
Yeah, definitely. Often people think that if you go no-till, you need to use glyphosate, for example, or you need to use other chemicals, because if you go no-till, you have the competition with weeds. But I have seen farmers doing regenerative organic, so zero spraying, and still being able to have no-till potatoes. So the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, how is this possible? But it is possible. People are doing it. On the other hand, it's extreme, but I still believe that we have to push ourselves as farmers because we're technicians and we're inventors, and we can't do this as humans. If we can send a guy to the moon, we can definitely find out how to do no-till organic.
How are they growing potatoes? How are they getting the seed in the ground?
By just making little furrows to plant them inside.
Ah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
So they're doing it. So they still work the soil a little bit, but not that much. On the other hand, I also don't think we need to be that extreme. I've seen regenerative organic farmers also using tilling for potatoes, but only a little bit, and only like once every 5 years, and they don't like go super deep. They just go a little deep to just make sure they go deep enough to make it easier for the potatoes. And these are maniacs. They keep on checking the soil, the carbon levels, and they keep on seeing that the carbon levels go higher. The soil life is increasing, and even with this very, very tiny amount of plowing. And then a question then that often comes after it is, okay, then how do you deal with the fertility issues, with wheat competition, stuff like that? And what's often being used is the use of temporary grasslands. So after you've had like a heavy sequence of crops, you sow in a temporary grassland, and you have it for 1 or 2 years, and you have like a very diverse mix of grasses and other perennials in it. And then it really like injects the soil with all these exudates, with all the sugars and all the different nutrients to make the soil life alive again. It deletes all the competition, so the weeds are removed, and after it you just go like just below the surface to like scalp it and sculpt the entire layer of it. The only thing there is that it's temporary grassland. What are you gonna do with the grass? But for that you have animals, and you can use it to feed animals.
Yeah, we're in drought here at the moment, and across
We too.
3 states, if not more, and a really dry summer for growing potatoes. But the grub can come in a lot easier too. And what else do? We have to put on some chemicals to stop that grub coming into the potato. It comes from a moth and then into the growing vegetable. It's a tough one.
Yeah, no, definitely. What I have seen is that the farmers that are using no-till methods and are really working with the soil have at their fields, they have no problems with it, but the neighbors still have problems with it. So it's easy to say, of course, well, work on a better soil quality, but it does work. If you work on a better soil quality, that you have less problems with pests and diseases, and that's often difficult then to see. But then what's the correlation? So, and one of the easiest ways to explain this is if you look at soil life, the bad guys are actually in the minority. So it's like with human beings. Most humans are good people, and there are some rotten apples. But the majority of people is good. It's the same in the soil. The majority of soil life is good, or of the ecosystem is good. There are a couple of rotten apples, but they're being kept in check by all the good guys.
Yeah.
And if you have a sterile soil, which often is the case because we use chemicals, some of the bad guys can really thrive in bad conditions, and then they are in a majority because they're not being kept in check by the good guys. But if you really go and build this soil ecology and use good crop rotation, but also use biomax, use cover crops in between to yields, even if it's for a couple of months, it can really make a difference. You build the soil life, then if the bad guys are present, they're really outnumbered by the good guys. And what I said before about this beautiful exchange system between the plant roots and the microbes, the microorganisms, the fungi, the bacteria. If you go a step further, you need to imagine that you are a bacteria or a fungi. You're living of the delicious pancakes of that plant. Let's say I see a bad guy coming in wanting to attack that plant. Then I'm like, hey, go away. You're attacking my source of income. I don't want you to do that because the plant gives me free pancakes. So I'm gonna like beat the hell out of you and remove you from the premises of this pancake parlor. And so these fungi and bacteria, they actually like build a protective sock around the roots. And sometimes you can even see it if you pull out the plant, that you have this glued aggregates like
A bit
on the
sticky.
roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of sticky. It's like, I compare it to like pulling a sock over your feet. It's like pulling a sock over the root. It's actually the same principle. So the microorganisms really protect the plants because they're getting food. You could say it's a beautiful friendship. You could also say it's a mafia because they only protect if they get protection money.
Yes. We've actually got an amazing product over here just near me where I'm living, Nutrisoil, and that's a worm tea. And there's various methods you can use that for, but a foliar spray is one of them. It's an organic fertilizer, and it is just amazing. And that will do exactly what you're saying. It's putting the good bugs into the plant to fight off all the bad ones, and they'll be way more powerful than the bad bugs.
Definitely, and that's also something that people often forget, is that even the leaves of the plant, the same happens on the leaves as what happens on the root. So it's the leaves are also full with microorganisms that also get these exudates, this food from the leaves. So the leaves feed those microorganisms, and they're also building a protective layer around the plant's leaves. So if bad guys come in, they're like having a layer of protection on it.
Right. This is fascinating, Louis. So do you think Regen Ag is being embraced globally?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people are really jumping on that wagon for different reasons. Some of the people doing it from an ideological reason. Other people are doing it because they realize that, well, why pay for it if you can get it for free? If you get free bacteria living on the leaves of the plants, protecting them, then why use foliar sprays? Or instead of like trying to kill, and you feed it with organic foliar sprays that are actually feeding these good guys, then it's like, okay, why fighting it if you can work together? A big thing with Regen Ag is that often people use it also to greenwash. So we've seen giant corporations globally say, oh, our practices are regenerative because we started to till less, or we started to use cover crops. And then it's like, yeah, okay, but if everybody's just going to use the word, then
Too loose.
we're getting nowhere. And that's why personally I love to use regenerative organic, because organic agriculture can also be destructive if not done the right way. Most of the organic farmers I know are doing it really good, but if you follow organic to the letter, you can go to Spain, get a field, illegally pump up water from aquifers, sucking out the rivers and sucking out the groundwater, and like growing a lot of broccoli and then selling it like 2,000 miles higher up, which is happening right now. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's horrible. And then I'm like buying organic in the supermarket and organic broccoli. I'm like, oh wow, I'm doing good for the world, but you're still destroying the world. So if done to the letter, organic can be bad. So we need regenerative put into organic to put organic in a higher level, but we need to also put the organic in the regenerative.
Yes.
And in Europe, you have the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture, EARA, and they really wrote down beautifully how they see regenerative agriculture. So they actually, I don't remember they used the word regenerative organic, but it's the same principle. They say, look, you can use chemicals if it's on your way to get chemical free. So let's say you're standing here and you still use a lot of chemicals because, like I said, the fields are drug addicts. If we've been drugging the field, so you can't just like take away the drugs. You need to send the souls to rehab, and then so little by little you phase out the pesticides. Sometimes in order to save a crop, then you still spray it, but then little by little you go to a place where you don't have to do it anymore because you actually built an ecosystem around the farm that's helping everything. So I think we should use the term regenerative organic. Another term that has been used a lot is agroecological farming.
Yep, I like that.
And inherently, what's nice about that is that the United Nations, they wrote down the principles of it, and it also takes into account the not just the farm technical side, but also the social side about treating farmers well, making sure that farmers get enough paid, that farmers get enough respect that they deserve. So if you use the term agroecological, it also like covers everything you need to cover. The only problem is that in some countries there are some political parties that have claimed the term, and
No.
and then they're like, yeah, okay, well, if that political party claimed the term, then all the other political parties are against the term. And I'm like, what the heck? It's about freaking farming. It's not
Yeah.
about political ideals.
That's
Like,
right.
okay, do you want food the next 30 years or not? That's the
Yeah.
question.
And that's where we'll pause for now with Louis. From supermarket logic to soil wisdom, he's challenging the way we think about food, farming, and the future. But we're just scratching the surface. In Part B, it's all about change on the farm, in the aisles, and in the way we think. We look at farming across generations, biodiversity as a superpower, and how Belgium supermarkets are finally backing smarter food and smarter shoppers. We'll also get into perennial agriculture, vertical farming, and why Louis says it's time to dream big if we want a healthier planet and healthier people. So don't miss Part B, it's packed. And don't forget, Louis de Jaeger's powerful new book, SOS Save Our Soils, is out now and available on Amazon. It's clever, inspiring, and full of practical hope for anyone who eats food or cares about the planet. Thanks for listening. Please share and follow us on social media. Salt of the Earth Farm Stories.